Hi everybody, it's Vivek here from Meaningful Ideas. And I want to talk a little bit about racism and my personal experience with it. I'm doing this in response to the recent murder of George Floyd by police in the States and how painful it is. And I'm seeing a lot of posts right now and a lot of comments from white people talking about how racism is everywhere and they get comments about their race too, and therefore people of color are racist too, and that we all have a choice on how we relate to the system, and you don't have to see yourself as oppressed. And then I have my activist friends who are saying all white people are racist, and or at least all white people who aren't actively working to dismantle the system are racist. And then you have the other white people who get offended by that and say, I'm not racist. And just because I'm not doing this, you can't call me racist. And this whole thing going round and round, back and forth, right? But the murders are real and the violence is real. And just because you're a good person doesn't necessarily mean you're not contributing to it. And this is the thing. So there are different aspects of how this whole situation comes to be. First of all, if you look at the past, people say, the past has nothing to do with me. I'm a good person in the present. But the fact is, the past affects all of us. It affects you just as much as it affects the other people. It's given you a certain position in society. It's given a view of your color in society. Like my friend wrote recently that if the police are called on you, it's not like a high likelihood that you're going to get shot. But if police are called on a person of color, even if they're not doing anything, there's a high likelihood they're going to get shot. So there's like a big discrepancy here, but we don't want to see that discrepancy a lot of the time. And I understand why, because it hurts inside. It hurts to see it, and so we block that pain out. We block that understanding out. But there's another way to relate to all of this. We don't have to relate to it that way. If somebody calls you racist, you don't have to take it as an insult. This is the one thing I want to share with you. You don't have to take it as an insult. You're taking it as an insult because you want to be a good person. And I understand that. You don't want to be labeled, and I understand that. But the fact is, when you're called a racist, you can also take it as a compliment. And I know that seems weird, right? But you could take it as a compliment because somebody is saying to you, hey, I want to help you understand the impact that you have in society. I want to help you understand how you can actually contribute to bringing peace and to bringing equality and to bringing harmony into society. And there's something that you're not seeing right now, and I'd like to help you see it. Now, a lot of the time when emotions are riled up, people don't say it that way. But it's your choice if you want to take it that way. You can take it that way. You can take it that way. You can open your heart, you can open your mind, and you can take it that way. For me, I don't think it's an insult when someone calls me racist or sexist. Now, first of all, I'm not white, even though I have very light skin. My family is from India, and all throughout my life, I've experienced racism. I grew up as one of the few Indian families in my area of Toronto, and I was always being called a Paki, go back home Paki, you smell, and people would throw eggs at our house, and groups of carloads full of white teenagers would drive by and throw things at me. One time, these white teenagers said "F you, Paki," and threw a metal pipe at me, and it hit me in the leg. I must have been 10 walking home from school, and they hit me in the leg and cut my leg open. And then in middle school, I was bullied severely every single day, bullied, beaten up, and constantly reminded that I was less than human. I was less than human because I wasn't white. This is the situation that I grew up in. This is the situation that the past you want to ignore has put people of color. So even if you can ignore it, right? You have the freedom to ignore it and to say, look, everybody can relate to it individually, but I didn't have that freedom. I still don't. I do more than people who are darker than me even, and I'm aware of that. But still, I'm not white. And growing up, especially with the kids around me, I experienced constant violence, and it's very painful. And so, and I actually have a picture. I'm sitting here right now, and I have a picture of George Floyd on my laptop because I want his face in my mind as I give this talk. And so this is something called what I call the hierarchy of human worth. There is definitely a hierarchy of human worth in society, and white people are at the top of that hierarchy. And I certainly am not at the top of that hierarchy. Now, on the other hand, I'm male. I'm a cis heterosexual male, which means I have a lot of power and privilege in that. And it also means that I am sexist and I am misogynist. I don't want to be, I'm fighting against it, I'm trying to dismantle it, but it's in me. It's in me because I grew up in a society, not just my family, but society, that has that as one of its base norms. That women and people of other genders other than male are less valid, less human, worth less. It's just the way it is. You can ignore it if you want to, and most of the time people ignore it because it's to their own, because it's difficult to face. It's painful to face. I want to be a good person, and I want to believe everybody's good. We're all good people, and we're all just trying to get along. But that's not the way the world works. It only works that if you're a white heterosexual male, you literally never have to notice the struggles and the oppression other people go through. Oppression is just a word. And it's this thing about it being an insult too. Somebody says to me, Vivek, you're being sexist, or you're a sexist. I'll say yes. Vivek, you're being a homophobe. I'll say yes. Yes, it's absolutely true. Please show me how, because I want to know. Because then when I know, I can change it. As long as I push it away, I can't change it. And that's the thing. Every single time you resist that label, you're consciously choosing to ignore it so that you don't have to do the work to change it. But it doesn't mean it's not inside you. And every time you do that, you actively participate in the oppression, the violence, and the death of people of marginalized demographics, whether it's women, LGBTQ, trans people, disabled people, people of different races, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And forgive me if I've missed any marginalized demographics, because children! Of course, children are one of the largest global oppressed demographics, and for all of these different groups fit into this hierarchy of human worth, and it exists. And maybe you think you don't believe in it, but by rejecting the fact that it exists, you actually are participating in it. And I want to encourage you to release your defensiveness and open your heart. As soon as you feel like arguing, stop yourself and take a breath. And think, how am I contributing to the benefit of marginalized people, of oppressed people who experience violence and oppression every single day? How am I contributing to them by being defensive and arguing? How am I contributing to that, to their well-being? Maybe you don't care about contributing to their well-being. At least be honest about that. If you want to do that, go ahead and be honest. Just be honest. There's a lot of people out there who are honest about that. I don't care. And that's fine. But if you do care, then stop and listen. When people of color tell you that the actions and the thoughts and the words that you're doing are harmful to them, stop and listen. When women tell you that the way you're behaving is painful, stop and listen. I hear so many people talk about, feminism is a plague on society. It breaks my heart when I hear that. It breaks my heart. The closed-minded, violent attitude that brings that about is so painful. And I am a feminist. I've been consciously a feminist. I call myself a radical feminist ally since the early 90s. When my feminist awakening came, when I realized I wasn't seeing women as equal human beings to men. And I've spent the last, how long is that? 30 years? Almost 30 years. I've spent the last 30 years every day dismantling that. Every day I get up and I say to myself, I'm racist, I'm sexist, I'm homophobe, I'm a transphobe, I'm ableist. I say all these things to myself. And when I get into a discussion with people about these things, I make sure I say that to myself because I want to be aware of my bias. I don't want to ignore it. I have all the stereotypes inside my head. I don't believe them. I don't want to live by them, but I don't want to pretend they're not there. And if they're there, then that's part of who I am. Of course, all of this takes courage. And I'm going to tell you very clearly that when you resist, it's fear. And when you open up and look honestly at it, it's courage. And the question is, are you going to be a coward around this? Or are you going to be courageous around this? The term social justice warrior is used by people in power demographics as an insult. I wear the label proudly because I want social justice is justice in society, and warrior means somebody with courage to fight against the enemy. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Open up your mind and be courageous. So I want to encourage you. I want to ask you, more than encourage, I want to ask you to open up your heart, open up your mind. Let yourself be courageous. I mean, courageous has the word cour, which is French for heart, in it, right? To be courageous and allow yourself to listen. Allow yourself to soften your hard edges and look at what you can actually do to make a difference. Every time you argue, every time you close your mind, you contribute to the problem. Now you say, oh, does that mean I have to believe everybody? No. But don't argue. Arguing is not getting anyone anywhere. When you engage with people around this topic, engage with a curiosity. Curiosity doesn't have defensiveness in it. As soon as you find yourself I'm not defensive, I'm just stating the facts. No, you're defensive. You're 100% defensive. I'll tell you how you know you're not defensive. If you're asking questions. If you're asking questions, and then when the answer comes, you don't argue, you ask more questions. And then when the answer comes to that, especially if you don't like it, you ask more questions. The question is power, because that means you're still open and you're still learning. And if you start with your question with so, this is another thing. If you start your question with so, it's very likely it's not a question. It's a statement, a defensive statement hidden. For example, so you think all white people are racist? As soon as you say so, automatically it's defensiveness, and you're not really listening. But if you say, look, I don't quite understand this thing about all white people being racist. Can you explain it to me? I'd really like to understand. Put that tone in your voice, really wanting to understand. Because again, if you look at racist doesn't always mean that you're going out there, killing black, indigenous people of color. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean you're actively denying them jobs or or cheering on the violence that they experience. It doesn't always mean that. It can mean very subtle things too. And the arguing that you do in these conversations, the closed-minded arguing that you do in these conversations, the defensiveness you hold in these conversations, contributes to the overall racism in the world. That's why the woman who called the police when a black person said, your dog needs to have a leash, and immediately she called the police and said, there's an African American who's threatening my life or whatever, as she's strangling her dog. That person and the cop who killed George Floyd are on the same spectrum. There are different parts of the spectrum. She wasn't trying to kill the man, but maybe a little bit. I'm sure she knows that the likelihood of what would happen if cops came to that park and saw a white woman and a black man in an altercation, what do you think is the likely outcome of that? Honestly, whose neck do you think is going to get stepped on? Who's going to be put down on the ground and put into cuffs? And they were isolated in that situation too. How scary it must have been for him. It's important to recognize that it's the same, different parts of the same scale, the same spectrum. I find myself, I get enraged at times, when I hear about these things that happened. I get heartbroken when I hear about people like George Floyd and so many others being brutalized by a racist society and racist system. And I know you want to feel good about yourself. I think you'll feel much better about yourself. Here's the thing. You'll feel much better about yourself if you drop the armor. I'm just reading a post right now on a friend's page, and this person says that this white person who's been arguing that the cops were fine and that they were actually being very professional, and that George must have done something to instigate it, and then and he gave them the power to kill him. And he's constructively evaluating the situation and providing feedback. Very, it's for him. It doesn't touch him, right? It's not dangerous for him, so he can just say that. It's no problem. It doesn't affect him. He doesn't have to worry about being the next one to be brutalized that way. And so it's painful to me to read this, the complete shutdown of looking at other people's experiences. It's painful, and you can do better than that. You can be better than that. and I'm asking you to do that. I'm taking a bit of a risk putting this out there like this. Maybe I'll lose half my audience, and that's okay. But I just want you to know, and I say this as a man too, right? As a man, be a feminist. As a straight person, be anti-homophobic, you know? Fight these things, speak up about them, fight them, at the very least, fight them in yourself, so that when you do engage with somebody in conversation around it, whether it's in person or on Facebook, that you don't get defensive, you don't close it out, you open yourself. Always look for more, don't look for less. Look for more ways that you're racist. Don't look for not being racist. How's that going to help anything? Look for more ways that you're racist. Look for more ways that you're sexist. Look for more ways that you're homophobic. Look for more ways that you're ableist. Every day, see if you can find something that you're racist about, so that you can change it. Every day, look for something that you're sexist about, so you can change it. Do that. That's much more important work. And you'll feel so much better about yourself. If you try to protect your self-image, that's the way to do it, my friend. Not by being defensive around it. So soften yourself, humble yourself, open yourself. Don't resist, and you'll make the world a better place. By arguing against these things, you're not making the world a better place. You're just contributing to the pain and the violence. So if you hate everything I've said, please unsubscribe to my YouTube channel and unsubscribe to my Facebook page. But if anything I've said touched you, please subscribe to it. My YouTube channel is Meaningful Ideas. My Facebook page is Meaningful Ideas. Mostly I share about conscious parenting and how to have a deeper relationship with your kids, which is why I mentioned children as a marginalized demographic before. Because, you know, I mean, children are legally allowed to be hit and put in isolation, solitary confinement, which we call timeout. We're allowed to steal from them, which means they have no property, of course, because we can take all their stuff and then people will say, oh, it's it's my right to treat my kid how I want. It's very similar, right? It's very similar kind of arguments that we hear around kids that we do around people of color and people of different marginalized communities. So. See, I got lost. I got off track again. I was doing my final wrap up and promoting myself, and I got caught up in the whole thing again. I'm just going to end. Follow me, please, or block me, whatever suits you. But I hope you don't. I hope you open up. I hope this video touches your heart. I hope you're willing to see the situation for what it is, and come on side and fighting for equality and justice and harmony, because I have to believe it's possible. I have to believe it's possible, or I wouldn't get up every day and fight this fight. So join me and let's make the world a better place.